to basically give you an idea. It looks like you're jerking off as you pull it. And that's why I tell her I beat her, is because I've had practice with this for like 20 years now.
I could make so many jokes about your wife, but I'm going to hold off on that.
Yeah, let's not.
Welcome, nerds, to another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. You can check out all of our content at our website, thenerdspodcast.com. For you gamers out there, we do have a companion YouTube channel, The Nerd You're Looking For. You can find that on YouTube, of course, just by searching The Nerd You're Looking For, or you can check out our website that I just talked about. You just click on the YouTube channel tab on that website. Also, we have a gaming journal where I keep track of all of the games that I have beat this year. I am embarrassingly far behind on that, but I will get caught up eventually. For you movie buffs, you can check out any movie that we've ever given a star rating for. You can check out those star ratings on our website as well by hitting the Nerd Reviews tab. And then, of course, you can follow us on Letterboxd. I am at The Nerds Podcast. You can follow my co-host at That Tyler Hunt. And, of course, I am joined by that co-host, That Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How are you?
I'm all right. It's been kind of a weird week, I think, for both of us, for two different reasons. I know that you just got back from Disneyworld, your yearly pilgrimage to the Holy Land, Disneyworld, and then I had jury duty, so we both had a pretty exciting week.
Oh, yeah, I remember you telling me about that. I think we talked about it on the podcast, too, actually, didn't we? Like, how'd that end up going? Did you get selected?
So I didn't get selected. I did have to actually go this time, and I was real pissed off about it because last time when I talked about it, it was on a Friday. So I was like, okay, sweet. At least I get out of work. Like, I get to experience that. I'm a big fan of like true crime documentaries, so it was going to be kind of cool to see that process up close. I didn't want to get selected, but unfortunately I didn't get to go that time because you have to call this number, and it turns out that they got a plea deal or whatever happened. And so I got another letter because you can be pre-selected an infinite amount of times they give you like 3-month period. And I got another letter saying that I needed to actually show up on a Monday. Well, for longtime listeners, you know that I work Tuesday through Saturday, which is actually changing this week. I'm going back to a more traditional schedule. But not only did I actually have to go this time, but it was on a fucking Monday, so I didn't even get to miss work for it. I had to go in on my day off, so that was kind of a bummer. But it was for a murder trial, which made it a little bit more interesting. So I did not get selected. It was a weird process. I felt weird just because it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. It felt like the prosecution and the defense lawyers were just kind of lecturing us. It felt like they were just, instead of asking us questions, they were just kind of lecturing at us. And it just kind of felt really weird. You could tell that they've gone through this process so many times. It's just kind of like second nature for them. So, yeah, it was a little awkward. Thank God I did not get selected. But, yeah, it was just kind of a weird thing that I had to do.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you got selected for a murder trial, you'd probably be out of commission for a while.
Actually, I found out that he was found guilty in about 2 days. So apparently it was a pretty straightforward case. That would have been kind of cool to be able to sit on a jury for something like that, because I would have gotten off work for a couple of days, and it seems like it was a pretty easy decision. So I guess I wouldn't have felt guilty about it either way. But yeah, it would have been cool. But at the same time, it was just the selection process was kind of boring. So I was like, okay, let's get this over with. And it was kind of funny because one of the jurors, I guess one of the witnesses, because they tell you, like, they read off the entire witness list, and one of the witnesses, or one of the prospective jurors that were in the group with me, up by the judge and all that stuff. The jury box, I guess, is what they call it. She was like, yeah. She kind of raised her hand. She was like, yeah. My niece was there when it happened, so maybe I should. And they were asking her questions, and she was bawling. And so when they were kind of convening, the judge and the two lawyers, and they were kind of discussing who was going to get picked and who was going to get taken off, they named her first, and then they named my name 2 later. And they didn't tell us what this group was yet. And I was like, as soon as I heard my name after her name, I was like, I did get picked because there's no fucking way they picked this lady. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, man. I as soon as I say this, I'm gonna jinx myself, but I've never even gotten a letter or anything related to jury duty. So I'm probably overdue at this point, but I've never gotten the opportunity to experience it. So kind of like you, I think that I would enjoy seeing the process, but I don't know, you make it sound pretty boring, so maybe it's not something I should wish for.
Yeah, for sure. And they kind of talk about it a little bit, this is not going to be what you see on TV and all that good stuff. And they actually at one point ask us, does anybody watch Law and Order or CSI or anything like that? And of course, I raised my hand. I don't watch those shows, but obviously I watch a lot of true crime documentaries. And they were like, oh, it's not going to be anything like this. I was like, okay, well, way to be a fucking bummer. But yeah, so it sounds like your week was a lot more exciting than mine. And I know that you're going to talk a little bit about it for what you're into. So let's just jump right in. If this is your first episode, the first segment that we do, we break up the entire episode into different segments. And the first segment that we do is just kind of checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So what are you into this week?
Yeah, so, you said it. My week was 100% Disney World for the most part. I left last Sunday, so the morning after we got done recording our last episode, and got back this morning. So pretty much from episode to episode, I was in Orlando, so that doesn't really give me an opportunity to watch a whole lot because we were in the parks every day. So I was trying to think about how I would go about doing this and talking about my trip without talking like somebody's grandparent showing them slides from their trip to the Grand Canyon or something, and not making it super boring and just self-servicing.
So you don't have a slideshow? I'm very disappointed.
Hey, I have tons of pictures on my phone, and if you actually want to see them, I will be happy to show you, but I don't
That's
think
a hard pass.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants that. So instead of just going through and talking about how much fun we had, which we did have a lot of fun, I wanted to focus on a few attractions and things that we did that were new to me and that are kind of new to the park. So they're kind of relevant to us and to nerd culture and things like that. So the 3 things I want to talk about are Toy Story Land, which opened in May. I want to talk about Pandora, which opened in 2017. And then I'm going to talk about a Star Wars virtual reality experience I did that blew my fucking mind. So I'll start with the softer stuff, which is, of course, Toy Story Land. So Toy Story Land opened in May. It is at Disney's Hollywood Studios. It's an addition to that park. It's pretty much supposed to be themed like you're in Andy's backyard. So there are giant statues of the toys. It's supposed to give you the feeling like you've been shrunk down to the size of a toy. There's characters you can meet there if that's your thing. And then, of course, there's attractions, right? That's what Disney World is. So the 3 attractions are Slinky Dog Dash, which is a roller coaster type ride. There is a less intense ride called Alien Swirling Saucers, which is kind of like, I would equate it to, do you know like the Scrambler that they would have at like fairs and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. It's more, there's more to it because obviously it's Disney, so it's not like a fucking fair ride. But that's kind of what it reminded me of. It kind of slings you back and forth like that. And then there's the Toy Story Mania ride, which has been there for a while, and they just kind of incorporated it into this land. So
is that the one where you like shoot the guns? I think I remember that one the last time I was there.
I always whoop Brittany's ass in it, and it's because you do this motion, like you're pulling a string back, and
which
you're
is
firing it
this
that
is
way.
Great for the audio podcast.
Yeah. So I'm showing you, but basically for anybody who's not familiar, there's a ball on a string, and you pull it back to fire. So to basically give you an idea, it looks like you're jerking off as you pull it. And that's why I tell her I beat her, is because I've had practice with this for like 20 years now.
I could make so many jokes about your wife, but I'm going to hold off on that.
Yeah, let's not. But yeah, anyways, those are the 3 rides. So Toy Story Mania has been around a long time. It's a ton of fun. Like I said, the Alien Swirling Saucer ride is, more geared towards children. The Slinky Dog ride isn't really an intense roller coaster. I mean, there's not any like big drops or anything like that, but it's themed so well. It's so cool. It's supposed to be like this track that Andy got and he put together, and of course Slinky Dog goes around it, and there's some cool moments in it. There's a spot where he like slingshots back and you go, and then the coolest part of the ride for me though was after it's over, whenever you're getting ready to roll back into the queue to get off the ride, there is an animatronic Wheezy that's singing "You Got a Friend in Me," which it looks amazing. So I thought that was a cool addition too. Overall, the park, it's okay. It's nothing too special. Like I said, there's only 3 rides. There's like a restaurant. It's nothing crazy. I will say I wish there was more shade, because it was hot as fuck in Florida and the sun was killer. And I guess Andy's backyard just doesn't have trees, because there was nothing. You just bake in that on the pavement. But besides that, it was pretty cool. So definitely a nice addition to Hollywood Studios, but obviously what everybody else is waiting for is for Star Wars next year at that park. So the next thing I wanted to talk about briefly was Pandora, which is a newer addition to Animal Kingdom Park. It opened, I think, May of 2017. There are 2 rides in this area, and then some other Avatar-themed things. And for those who are unaware, I don't know what your thoughts on the Avatar movie is. I'm not really a big fan of it. I saw it once in theaters, never watched it again. I saw it in IMAX, didn't really get what the big deal was, and obviously, like I just said, I've never watched it again, or never had the inclination to watch it again. So what did you think about Avatar?
So I really loved it the first time I saw it, and then I've liked it less and less every time, and I liked it enough at the time when the special edition came out to rebuy the special edition, and then I watched which is surprising that they made an even longer version of that movie, but I watched the 3.5 hour version of that movie, and I was just like, this movie sucks. Like, I kind of got to that, I had that epiphany as I was watching it, and I've literally never watched it again.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the experience I had the first time I watched it. And this is going to sound weird, but the Pandora section of this park, so like this new land, I guess you'd call it, almost makes me appreciate that movie more because of how fucking awesome it was. And I honestly did not think I'd say that. Like I said, I could care less about Pandora. I wasn't excited to go see this new attraction. Obviously, I didn't get my hopes up about it or anything, but it was really fucking cool. They have some floating mountains. They have guys walking around in mech suits like they have in the movie. And then, of course, they have the 2 attractions. So the first attraction is called Navi River Journey, and it's pretty lame. It's just a boat ride. There is this animatronic in it, though, of a Navi that is frighteningly real. It's insane. It's the weirdest animatronic I've ever seen in my life. So that was pretty cool. But overall, it was like a super long wait for just a boat ride through like a Navi jungle or a Pandora jungle. So, you could give or take that probably. But Flight of Passage, the other attraction in this land, is a fucking religious experience. I don't even know how to explain how good it is. It's essentially you're riding a banshee. So they're telling you throughout the line for this ride that they're creating an avatar for you, and the Navi go through this rite of passage where they have to ride a banshee, and you're going to go through that. And you go into this room and you sit on this chair, and you kind of straddle it the way you would straddle a motorcycle. And you basically put on these 3D glasses, you link up with your Banshee, and after you link up, you're supposed to be on the back of this thing, right? And you're flying. And the way that they do the screen and the way that they incorporate everything into make it feeling like you're really on the back of a Banshee is insane. Like, the thing fucking breathes, and you feel it on your thighs breathing. Yeah, as you're flying through Pandora, you have smells, and you're getting hit with water whenever you're going above like the ocean or whatever, and it's amazing. I'm not doing it justice, but it's the best ride I've ever been on in my life at any park anywhere. It's insane. It's insane the technology they had for that ride. It really was crazy. So I know it sounds silly to say it, but it almost made me appreciate the movie a little bit more, and I want to go back and revisit it again since I haven't watched it since it was in theaters. And maybe I'll still be pretty lukewarm on the movie, but they really knocked that land out of the park at Animal Kingdom. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'll again try to be pretty quick here, is something that I didn't even have on my radar whenever we were going into this trip, and it was my favorite thing that I did the entire week. So there is a company called The Void, and they're like a virtual reality game creating company. I think that their first big game that they had, where you could play it in like Los Angeles and New York and a couple other places, was a Ghostbusters game back in I think 2015 or 2016. And I never played that, but I guess that's what put this company on the map. And somehow they got lucky enough to partner with Lucasfilm and Disney, and they created a Star Wars virtual reality experience called Secrets of the Empire. And it's kind of a tie-in to Rogue One. I guess it came out shortly after Rogue One did, and it takes place before the end of that movie because Diego Luna is kind of like the introductory character to all of it, and he's kind of setting you up for your mission. And basically, it's you and your party. So for me, it was me, my wife, my sister-in-law, and her fiance are going undercover as stormtroopers on Mustafar to capture some Imperial intelligence, like this secret item that's going to help the rebellion, and you don't know what it is. So again, you're disguised as stormtroopers, and it's insane, man. Like you put the vest on, you put the headset on, and you look around, and everybody else, like my wife and the other two people in our party, they look like stormtroopers. You put your hands up, and it looks like stormtrooper hands. It's insane. And like I said, it's on Mustafar. So you like walk across this bridge at one point, and it gets hot, like you're walking over lava. And there's a part where you fight like a lava monster. Like you end up finding your blaster, and you grab your blaster off the wall. I don't want to spoil the end of it, but if it's taking place on Mustafar, and I tell you that there's a special appearance by a character at the end of it, you could probably guess who I'm talking about. And it is the most terrifying thing. I don't want to say the most terrifying thing I've ever been through, but it's terrifying to have like this guy walking towards you. Fuck it, I'm going to spoil it. So it's Darth Vader, obviously. And when you watch a Star Wars movie, sometimes I think to myself, like, why would they keep shooting at the Jedi? Because they constantly just block your blaster, the blast back at you. And like, why would the stormtroopers or whoever even take those shots? And in the moment when Darth Vader is walking at you and towering over you, all you can do is shoot at him. So I mean, I was completely put in that place, and I completely get that thought process now because that's all you could do at that point. But it was amazing. It was so realistic. You're walking through rooms. You're going up elevators. It's insane. So I will say that you can do this in other places besides Orlando. So it was like $35 a person. It was actually at Disney Springs, which used to be downtown Disney. But there's other cities that you can play this at where they have locations set up. So you can play it at Disneyland. You can play it in Canada and Malaysia, Glendale, California. But the one I wanted to bring up for you was Las Vegas. So you can play in Vegas, and I know that that's where your family lives. So I would highly encourage you to seek that out next time you're in Vegas, because for a Star Wars fan, it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I will definitely have to do that. So that wasn't a big spoiler for me because I figured that's who it was. I mean, yeah, obviously that's who it is. And I just think it's funny that you became a shitty stormtrooper that you always make fun of.
Yeah, I think the funniest part was like as Vader is walking towards you. And again, it's kind of terrifying because he towers over you and there's nothing you can do about it. I looked back and my sister-in-law was like in the corner cowering. It's crazy. Like you could reach out and touch droids, and the droids were like actually in the room. It was nuts, man. So they completely outdid themselves, and I hope that they continue to make those types of games. And I really hope that VR is the future, because it was my first experience with VR, and it was mind blowing, obviously. So
yeah, I don't know Brooke that well, but that sounds about right.
Cool, man. So thanks for letting me be a little self-serving there and talking about my Disney trip. But with all that being said, what are you into?
So I decided to go for a little appetizer. We're going to, obviously, for the main topic, if you read the show notes already, you know that we're going to talk a lot about Shocktober. Shocktober actually starts as this episode drops tomorrow. So I've been really looking forward to it. It's something that obviously we look forward to every year. And I just kind of wanted an appetizer for that. And there's this new movie that just came out called Hellfest. It was directed by a guy named Gregory Plotkin, who is the editor of Get Out and Happy Death Day. He also directed one of the Paranormal Activity films. I don't remember which one, but it was one of them. And essentially what this movie is about is a group of friends decide to partake in a one-night only horror-themed park. But in the course of the night, they are terrorized by a serial killer who they believe is part of the park. Like I said, I really just kind of wanted an appetizer for Shocktober. But the closer I got to actually going to see this movie, the more excited I got, just because I thought with the concept, I thought it could be really fun. First of all, obviously, huge horror fan. Also, I love Halloween. So the idea of a movie that has this horror theme park where the characters basically go room from room and it's just basically a different set. And I was really excited for that. Just the set design got me really excited, and that didn't disappoint. It was really, really cool to look at. It was actually kind of weird because we talk about this a lot with horror movies, is a lot of these movies are really successful because they're made really cheap. And I can't imagine that this movie was made cheap as far as horror genre is concerned, because every time they went to a different room, there was this just this ridiculous set design. So it had to have been pretty expensive to make, relatively speaking, for the horror genre, expensive to make this movie. What really let me down with this movie, and you get this with a lot of horror movies, is there was bad acting. Really, really bad acting and really bad screenwriting. But you can kind of get away with that in the horror genre, because anybody that's a fan of slasher films, and this is definitely a slasher film, those are kind of tropes within the genre. So you forgive it a little bit when you go to see movies like this. But the thing that I think really bothered me and really just made me super bored while I was watching this movie is because the characters aren't sure if this guy is part of the park or if he's actually trying to kill them. They kind of mess with him somewhat in basically the first two acts. They kind of just mess around and don't really care about him and just kind of ignore him as they kind of make their way through the park. And the stakes in this movie are just super, super low because of it. And I just never really felt all that scared for them, mostly because they weren't really scared throughout the movie. Come the third act, because the writing was so bad and there was very little character development, I didn't really care about them when they started to get like scared in the movie. So that was definitely disappointing. And then the next thing that was super, super disappointing with this movie is, you would think they're in this amusement park, so there's so many things that you can use, and I wanted this film to be fun, like to have like fun kills, and unfortunately there really wasn't a ton of really fun kills. Like there was one where the killer knocks this guy down, and he's on one of those I don't even know how to describe it. It's one of those little things where you take the hammer and you hit it and it dings the bell. And so he smashes him with the hammer and it dings the bell. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cute. That's a fun kill. And this was somewhat early in the movie. So I was like, sweet, like it's gonna be fun. Like they're setting the stage for a kind of a fun, campy movie. And that's not what they did the rest of the movie for the most part. And then there was this one kill that was, well, it wasn't even a kill because the person got away, but it was so stupid. So they had this fake guillotine in the park. And so he straps this woman into the guillotine and he brings the blade down. Of course, it's not a real guillotine, so the blade isn't sharp. And so it just falls on her neck and it just kind of cuts her a little bit. And if you're a history buff like me, you know that when they actually use guillotines, like people would pay the executioner to sharpen the blade so it would get them on the first cut. Because a lot of times it would take more than one like slice to cut their head off, and obviously that would be extremely painful. So I guess this movie is historically accurate in that sense, but that's not necessarily what I want from this movie. And so he had to, like, he brings down the blade on her neck and it doesn't cut her, and so he's got to like crank it back up, and you see this whole process. And of course by the time he gets it back up and he brings it back down, they cut and she's no longer there. It was really stupid. And there wasn't that many kills. I only think like maybe six people die in this movie, which is a slasher film. You would expect there would be more people. I mean, there's so many people in this park, and he only terrorizes like this group of like six people, which is disappointing. And there is a bit of a kind of a, I don't want to say cliffhanger, but there is a bit of a kind of a twist at the end, and I didn't care about this movie, so I thought it was pretty stupid. But I was talking to one of my buddies, and he really liked the ending, so maybe it was just because I was kind of tired of this movie. But very disappointing. It wasn't a good start as far as an appetizer for Shocktober, but I really wanted this movie to either be fun or be really good, and it was neither of those things.
So I didn't know this was a movie until I saw you check into it on, I think, Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So this was not on my radar at all, but I was excited to see there would be a new horror movie like heading into October 1st. So I had penciled this in to possibly watch this week at some point as part of Shocktober, but you had me really rethinking that at this point.
Oh yeah, so this movie is like only an hour and 30 minutes, and I actually looked at my phone and I had only watched like 25 minutes of the movie. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? That's how boring this movie is. That 25 minutes into it, I thought we were like an hour into it.
Yeah, if a horror movie is boring, it's not doing its job right. Because even bad horror movies, typically there's some type of enjoyment, even if it's just like a cheese factor. So if it doesn't even have that, then that's pretty bad.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. You ready for comics?
Yeah, what'd you read this week?
So we don't typically do this, but I have two comics I read.
Okay.
In case you read one of them.
Okay.
I read them on the plane back this morning, and I don't have a lot to say about either of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about both of them very briefly. So the first one I wanted to talk about was kind of like the big comic of the week. It's called Heroes in Crisis, written by Tom King, who's currently writing Batman, and Clay Mann was the illustrator. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this book because of the way that the first issue is laid out. It's kind of hard to talk about it anyways, but I've never read anything like this before, and I wanted to bring it up. So this book was advertised to be following Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman as they hunt the person that massacred a slew of heroes at a Justice League mental health facility. And that may be kind of a strange concept for a superhero book, but the mental health angle of this book really hits hard, and it examines the effect that trauma has. And I don't think that that's something that superhero books are really known to cover a whole lot, but it's kind of cool the way that Tom King spins this story. It's very comic booky, but it definitely has real world implications. This book lays everything out really well, and it jumps between different points in time throughout the storytelling, which really gets the message across. But again, that makes it kind of hard to recap. We do find out who is behind the massacre in this issue, and the answer to that question is plastered all over the internet, but I'm not going to dwell on any of that, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you pretty much know who it is from the get-go. I know Tom King had said that he was inspired to do this story when he realized the potential that his son could be harmed in a school shooting, because obviously that's been a pretty big issue over the last few years. And obviously it can be a little dicey when a superhero book from DC or Marvel deals with real world issues that are this personal. But if they're done right, they typically stick out and leave an imprint. So far through this first issue, it's definitely done that. And I'm eager to see which way Tom King takes it from here, because I liked it a lot. The other book I read is called Maneaters. And this is an image book that is written by Chelsea Kane and drawn by Katie Niemczyk. This book deals with a pretty boring, really played out story that's been done a ton of times. It's basically about a mutation in the not so distant future that causes menstruating women to turn into ferocious killer cats.
Oh, I know, right?
That old story. So these killer cats are obviously extremely dangerous, and since this mutation has come around in this book, the government has pretty much put a stop to it by introducing hormones into the water supply that stops menstruation in women. But every once in a while, something happens and someone gets through. And in this case, the book follows one of those stories. So the protagonist is this 12-year-old girl who menstruates for the first time and believes that she's the person responsible for the recent attacks by one of the killer cat creatures, because the whole thing is, it's kind of like a werewolf thing. You don't remember doing it. So the body turns up and they know that there's this killer cat out there and she assumes it's her. And that's what we're led to believe. So the interesting thing here is that her dad works on the police force alongside the sector that deals with these incidents. And while the first issue does a lot to set the stage, and there's a ton of comic book science, obviously, and it's very exposition heavy, it's actually pretty riveting stuff. Obviously, it's all part of a bigger message, and the story has a lot of parallels to misogyny and our culture, as well as what society can look like when a government is ran by men and they tell women what they can and can't do with their bodies. Obviously, that's kind of topical, but it's done with a very violent spin with these cat creatures. Apparently, there is some controversy with this book because the scientific explanation of all this deals a lot with hormones, like I was saying, and certain hormones are being added to the water to stop the mutation and eliminate estrogen to a certain extent. And I guess this upsets some members of the trans community, since hormones play a pretty instrumental role in how many of them transition. And I can't really comment on that too much because I'm not educated enough on the topic. But what I will say is that if you put that aside, you have a pretty cool concept for a book that has some promises and is, again, pretty topical given the Me Too movement and the recent events that have happened in our government over the last couple weeks. I definitely love the empowerment for women that this book kind of lays out, and it looks like this book is going to continue. I think it's a miniseries. I don't think it's ongoing, so I'm excited that this will exist for, girls to read as they grow up. But as a grown man, I can say that it was also a great read for me, albeit, given that it's such a weird concept.
So the entire time that you were discussing that book, I had my butthole clenched the whole time because I was so afraid that you're going to say my least favorite word in the entire history of the universe, which is period. I hate that word so much. My wife and I decided to call it special lady time. That is our deal. We do not say that word unless we're discussing punctuation. So yeah, it's I was like, please don't say it, please don't say it, please don't say it.
Well, the beginning of this book starts off with the 12-year-old girl like doing this weird thing where she's like daydreaming about this superhero that's a tampon, and I was almost immediate like, all right, like, we're not going to continue with this. But it reminded me so much of a werewolf story, and I've gone on record on the podcast a bunch about how much I love werewolf stories that I wanted to continue with it, and I'm glad I did.
For sure.
Cool. What'd you read?
So most of what I'm going to talk about, well, pretty much all I'm going to talk about is very Shocktober-esque. I read a comic book that I didn't actually know was happening, but I was immediately intrigued by it because I love the show so much. There is a new Stranger Things Dark Horse miniseries that just was released this week. It was written by Jody Houser and Stefano Martino. And like I said, this is a 4-part miniseries by Dark Horse, and this is kind of the perfect example, at least conceptually, what I want these miniseries that kind of adapt TV or movies, because this book is kind of explores Will's time in the Upside Down, which he's in the Upside Down pretty much the entire first season of Stranger Things. And like I said, this is kind of conceptually the perfect way I think these miniseries can kind of tie themselves into whatever they're adapting, because they can add mythology. There is a gap in the Stranger Things mythology. There's so much in that show in just 2 seasons, but one thing that we're missing is what the hell was going on with Will in the Upside Down in season 1, and this book at least attempts to answer that question. They did not at all in this first issue, which is disappointing because, like I said, like a million times already, this is only a 4-part miniseries, so you would think that they would want to get to the point quicker than they did. It's so disappointing because I think it's such a cool concept, the Upside Down, and we don't get to see a ton of it in either season. So I was really looking forward to seeing how this book was going to do it, but honestly, and I understand that they have to do this. They can't just rely on the fact that we've seen the show. Like, anybody reading this book has seen the show. Who's starting off with Stranger Things with a 4-part miniseries from Dark Horse? Like, obviously you've seen the show, but the book can't assume that you did. So they kind of have to get him to the Upside Down. So there is a lot of recapping. A majority of this issue is just recapping stuff that we've already seen. So it's just very disappointing because we don't get to him in the Upside Down until like the very end of this issue, and it's like, what the fuck was the point? Like, you just showed me stuff that I could just watch on Netflix. A better version of this is the first episode of Stranger Things. So it was very disappointing that they didn't try to do more, because they basically have this blank check, because we have no idea what happened to Will. I mean, other than like vague references to it, we don't really know what happened to him. And so they played it super, super safe for me. And I don't know. It was very disappointing. That being said, probably read the next issue just because I love Stranger Things. And I'm hoping that once we now have Will in the Upside Down, maybe they'll actually do something.
Did you say it was 4 issues?
Oh, yeah.
No.
I thought you were kidding. I thought you were kidding because I said it like 6 times.
Well, it just blows my mind that it's only 4 issues and they spent the entire first issue doing exposition stuff that's already answered in the show.
Exactly. That's why I was so disappointed.
Yeah, it blows my mind that they would do that. So weird, man. So that is disappointing, but hopefully you get some extra stuff that you're looking for, I guess.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I said, I'm going to stick with it at least for one more issue. I'm not going to do what I used to do a couple of years ago, which is, oh, well, it's only 4-part. I might as well just go ahead and finish it out. No, if issue 2 sucks, then I'm not going to keep with it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's weird. It's almost like the thing Marvel does where they do the comic book version of The Last Jedi. It's like, who the fuck's reading that? Just watch, like, we all saw the movie. Anybody who's reading that book saw the movie. I just don't get that. Yeah,
who is like, they see that The Last Jedi has been released and like, nah, I'm just going to wait for the comic book adaptation.
Exactly, man. Cool. So,
all right,
you ready?
So what's nerd news this week?
All right. So a couple things here. The first is kind of a 2-parter. So did you watch the new trailer for Dark Phoenix?
I did.
What'd you think?
I thought it did what it was supposed to do. Like, I'm not super nervous about this movie anymore. It looked all right. It kind of gave me some Last Stand, like, nostalgia. Not necessarily nostalgia because that movie's awful, but just, like, pressed memories from watching The Last Stand because it's so similar. But, I mean, I like the First Class cast, so I'm excited to see their version of The Last Stand.
Yeah, so I thought it looked pretty good, too. I don't think it looks bad by any means. I know that we had some question marks around it as we did our Rotten Tomato draft. I don't think it's going to revolutionize the X-Men franchise. I think that they're still pretty much done for once Disney acquires them and it kind of gets relaunched. But, I mean, it looks fine. The second part to that story, though, is that it got pushed back again. to June of next year. So it went from it was supposed to be October or November to February to now June of next year. So crazy that they keep pushing these movies back, but hopefully it's all for good reasons.
Yeah, originally when I saw that it got pushed back again, I was like, well, fuck. Like, what are we going to do for the Rotten Tomatoes thing? Like, we can't wait until June. So we'll definitely have to figure something out, because I think we were just going to wait until February, because February, I mean, who cares? It's just 1 month. But yeah, I don't think that we can wait until June of next year. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've essentially won at this point. There's no way, unless Venom comes out and it completely blows everybody away and it has like 100%. And then I have Into the Spider-Verse. Like, that would have to be 1,000%, and I might win. But no, I'm definitely gonna lose. But then I saw that they were taking it from February to June. I was like, well, maybe they have a pretty good idea. Maybe this movie's going to be a lot better than we thought it was going to be. But honestly, it's probably just because the trailer, a ton of people watch the trailer. So they're like, oh, let's just put it into the summer instead of February.
Yeah. So I say that we just wait till the end of the year, tally up our scores, see how high it would have to be for you to beat me. And if it's above 100%, obviously we know to call it. But if it's not, then we'll just have to figure it out. So
okay.
Cool. So I did have some trailer trash that I wanted to bring up. And it was kind of last minute because I just watched the trailer before we started recording. But did you watch the trailer for Holmes and Watson, starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly?
I did not, but I have not heard good things. I used to give Tyler shit for this all the time when we would go see movies together, but it was mostly because I hate saving seats. You would always put me in like a weird position where I would like have a lot of social anxiety about saving you this seat, because you would always walk in like as the movie was starting, and you would all be like, well, the movie hasn't actually started. No, motherfucker, if it says 7 o'clock, be here before 7 o'clock. But now I've gotten to the point where I see so many movies every week that I see the same trailer over and over again. So if the movie starts at like 3:15, I don't leave my house until like a little after 3. So I'm sitting down as the movie starts because I'm tired of seeing the same trailers over and over again. So no, I have not seen this trailer yet.
It's really bad. So obviously hinted by the trailer trash segment here. I did not laugh once. It's like a weird mixture of slapstick comedy that doesn't work with one-liners that don't work. So obviously it's like a comedic take on Sherlock Holmes, and there's definitely some Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes franchise in there as well. But I don't know what Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly are thinking, because it's garbage, man. It looks really bad, and it's opening this holiday season, so I can't imagine it's going to do well. But definitely check out that trailer if you haven't already, because it is something to see. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching it tonight when I post this episode.
Cool. So 2 more stories, both relatively quick. So the last one the second to last one I wanted to bring up was, what do you think about what we've seen of Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker?
I don't like that this movie is being made, but I'm a little less nervous about it. Like I can't. Well, I mean, I can't imagine that people are losing their shit because they lose their shit about everything. But I can't imagine that there's too much to complain about. The only thing that I'm really nervous about, and I had forgotten this, is that Todd Phillips is making this movie. Who the fuck gave him this movie? Like, I don't understand why he is, out of everyone that could be doing this movie, he's doing this movie. But, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor. As long as they don't do something really fucking stupid, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen nothing but positive reactions to what we've seen so far. Like, obviously they released the first look at him, and then they released like a short video of him, and the end of it's him in the Joker makeup. And for me, I'm not crazy about like the blue highlights or like the red on the nose, because obviously that's not the Joker we know. And I wish that they would do like the acid wash from Ace Chemicals, and who's to say it doesn't happen in the movie and that he just kind of dons face paint and they do that instead of maybe like the Red Hood aspect of it. But I mean, he looks terrifying, kind of. So I'm excited for it. If anybody can rival Heath Ledger, it's Joaquin Phoenix. So I'm curious to see what he does here.
Oh yeah, for sure. It looks cool. I think that it's kind of weird that they're already showing us so much this early. Like, it doesn't seem like a ton of movies do that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe they do, and I just don't. I try to stay away from that kind of stuff because, like I've said a lot, is I try to go into these movies as blind as physically possible. But it seems like it's weird that we're getting like a ton of shots of him, and we haven't even seen a trailer yet.
Yeah, I think it was because, like, the day after they released that, there was set video from a subway.
Yeah,
that showed him. I would imagine they were just trying to get ahead of that, so they put it out there before it got leaked by somebody whenever they were filming in New York, would be my guess. But cool. So last story. So this one's a little bit weird, but I wanted to bring it up because I know it's close to your heart. So one thing that always used to really annoy me in middle school and high school was when kids that grew up in southern Indiana acted really hard and would go and buy things like Friday or Next Friday or How High. And I don't know if you saw this.
I have owned all three of those movies at one point.
You know, I knew that. And I just wanted to let you know, since How High was the first DVD you ever purchased.
It is. How do you remember that? Like, what fucking, like, I didn't even remember that until you said that.
You never told me that. I will reveal my sources in a moment. But I just want to let you know that there's going to be a TV movie on MTV starring Lil Yachty, and it's going to be a sequel.
I have no idea who that is.
I don't either, but I thought you would want to know, since that was the first DVD you ever bought, that they're making a sequel to How High called, I guess, How High 2. I don't fucking know. But no, your buddy Jeff sent me a message on Facebook the other day and told me I had to put that in the Nerd News, and I had to give you a bunch of shit because that was the first DVD you ever purchased. And
I actually knew that they were making a sequel because they've been working on it for a long time.
That's all super embarrassing. But at least you owned it, so I'll give you that. But I've never seen How High. And no, I do not know who Lil Yachty is. But there you go, man. Do with you what you want with that information.
Just don't see it. It's not good. It's so stupid. And the weird thing about it is I am literally and figuratively like the whitest person you'll ever meet. I don't like rap for the most part, and I wasn't much of a stoner, at least not until college. At my peak, I wouldn't even consider myself a stoner, but that didn't hit until I was in college. I bought this DVD when I was like a sophomore in high school. Like, what about this movie applied to sophomore in high school Pat? I have no idea why I purchased that movie.
Do you still have it in your collection?
Oh God, no! That was long time ago.
Yeah, I'm not gonna watch it, but it helps me sleep at night knowing that was the first DVD you ever bought.
Yeah, I wish I had a cooler story, but I've already revealed that information to Jeff, so I cannot lie about it.
Cool, man. Well, that's all I have for Nerd News.
All right, so like I said earlier in the episode, we are going to do a Shocktober preview. So we do this episode every year leading into the month of October. This, again, like I said earlier, is actually dropping on October 1st, which is really, really cool. I thought it kind of lined up perfectly there. So for long-time listeners, you already know what Shocktober is. We talk about it a lot throughout the year. I'm actually going to put an extra timestamp in the show notes for this episode if you want to go ahead and skip ahead. I think that it's important for new listeners because this is not a term that I think is widely known. It's not something that we came up with, but it's not something that outside of like this really niche audience would really know what Shocktober is. So I think it's important that we go ahead and explain what Shocktober is for anybody that's jumped on recently. We have had a decent amount of growth in the last couple of months as far as downloads are concerned. So it is important to go ahead and explain real quick, and then just if you know what it is and you want to skip ahead, just look at the show notes. So Shocktober is a celebration of Halloween, but mostly the horror film genre, in which Tyler and I watch a horror film every day for the entire month of October. So obviously there's 31 days in October. So the goal is to have watched at least 31 films throughout the course of October. We try to do it once a day, but shit happens. So if you have time, a lot of times I watch 2 or 3 a day if I can. And that way, if I get busier later in the month, I have those kind of stacked up. And we also will talk about our Shocktober staples. That's something that Tyler and I came up with, a term that we came up with. Basically, there are certain films that we watch every Shocktober just because we either love them. Well, I mean, of course we love them, but also just because we think that they're so good that we want to revisit them every year. So I do think that we should just go right off the bat and just kind of talk about our Shocktober staples just real quick, and then we'll welcome the longtime listeners back, and then we'll kind of get to the actual main topic. So for any new time listeners, what are your Shocktober staples, Tyler?
I feel like I probably change this every year, even though they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think I tweak it every year.
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, like they stay the same. So for me, we're probably gonna have some overlap here, but for me, it's obviously Halloween, and then Trick or Treat, which I think is like a quintessential Halloween movie. And over the last probably 4 or 5 years, the one that I think I look forward to most, that has definitely become a staple for me, is Rocky Horror. So those are like the 3 that I know for sure I'll watch, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of other repeats this year, but like when I think about the 3 that I have to get in, it's those 3.
Yeah, so I have a few others. I have 5 actually, and like I said, I think like 2 years ago when I made this list, I think there was like 10. So I definitely trimmed down that list to just The Thing. And of course, I'm talking about the 1982 version. Then I also have The Descent, Night of the Living Dead, and of course, I mean the 1968 version, The Mist, and then The Crazies, which is the 2010 version. So those are my Shocktober staples. So did we have any overlap? I was barely paying attention.
It doesn't sound like it.
All right, so welcome back, longtime listeners. If you took my advice and looked at the show notes, we are going to, right off the bat, kind of give a recap of last year's Shocktober, just to kind of set the mood, and then we'll kind of go into what we expect for the next month as far as Shocktober is concerned. So how do you feel like you did last year, Tyler?
So if you go back and you listen to our Shocktober recap from last year, you'll hear the same story, but for all intents and purposes, I'll tell it again. So last year was tough for me because at the time I was living in a hotel, and my wife and I were transitioning from moving in southern Indiana to where we live now, which is near Cleveland. So we actually moved the week of Halloween. So between unpacking and moving and all of that stuff, it was pretty tough. I didn't reach my goal last year. I didn't watch 31 movies, but I did manage to squeeze in 27, which, given the circumstances, I feel like was pretty good. But to get to 27 even, I had to double up on a lot of days. So for me, over the last couple of years, it's definitely become more of a 31 horror movies or Halloween-themed movies in 31 days as opposed to a movie a day, because that's typically the only way I'm going to hit the number. So I have better intentions for this year, but yeah, last year was pretty tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure I mentioned this when we did that episode last year, but yeah, you had a rough month that just happened to kind of land on the same kind of crazy month for you as trying to move to Cleveland. So obviously we'll give you a pass for that one. But yeah, it's going to be another crazy month actually, because Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out, also Making a Murderer Season 2, also Daredevil Season 3. So it's going to be a rough month. So it'd definitely be one of those Shocktobers where I'm just like, as long as I get 31, then I'm good. But I mean, the goal every year going into October is to do, at least for me, a movie a day if I can. And I didn't really do that last year. I did hit my 31 if you include Shocktober in Irvington, the special event that our buddies from The Obsessive Viewer do every year. I do count that as kind of my movie for that that day. So I did hit my 31. I did a franchise review. I always do like what I call a franchise review. Like a couple of years ago, I did watch all the Scream movies. And then last year I did Chucky or Child's Play, whatever you want to call it. So I did that last year. Like I said, I did hit my magic number of 31. But if you look at my letterbox, which you can follow me at the Nerds Podcast, if you have a letterbox, I didn't watch a horror film after the 25th. So obviously I doubled and like tripled up, and then I must have gotten really busy after the 25th. I will say that my last horror film for last year was the Riff Tracks version of Night of the Living Dead that my wife and I went and saw in the theaters. So I did kind of end it on a bang. Like that was really cool. I'd never seen a Riff Tracks before, and to see one of my favorite movies of all time as a Riff Tracks, that was kind of a cool event. So shit happens. We're going to get busy. Like I said, it's going to be kind of a crazy month this month. I'm already trying to rewatch the first 2 seasons of Daredevil as I'm also trying to do my Shocktober. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely going to hit 31. I don't remember the last time I didn't hit 31. So as far as 2018 Shocktober, I do want to share this a little bit before we get going. I have I was going to say a friend of mine, but it's really kind of my wife's friend. She is I don't want to say a big horror fan, but she is more than my wife, but pretty much everybody's more than my wife because she kind of hates the genre, but she is a fan of the horror genre. And my wife was telling her about how we do Shocktober every year, and she actually asked my wife if I would make her a list of the movies I think that she should do for Shocktober. So she's actually going to do it this year, and I actually got to make that list. And for fun, I actually posted that list as a list on Letterboxd, so you can find it if you follow me on Letterboxd at the Nerds Podcast again. It's I think I called it like my beginner's guide to Shocktober. So that was really cool, kind of building that list, and you can check it out on our Letterboxd or on my Letterboxd. I also made a list for myself, just kind of a wish list of, I think it was like 20 movies that I just put together, that those are the movies. Obviously I want to shoot for 31, but if worst comes to worst, those are the 20 that I absolutely have to see by the end of Shocktober.
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up because a couple years ago, I got my buddy Jake into Shocktober. I mean, he's a big enough movie buff that he didn't need me to tell him what horror movies to watch. But I think that that's a cool idea that you did that. And it's cool because he has a letterbox and he doesn't use it throughout the year, but he uses it around this time of year so I can see what he's watching and he can see what I'm watching. He did a Shocktober preview. I did a Shocktober preview as well. I have it as private right now, but I'll probably go ahead and mark it as unprivate tonight so I can see what my expectations end up being to what I really end up watching. But it's cool how Shocktober kind of spreads. You know, I got it from you got it from your buddies, and I know it's not like this unique thing to us. I know if you go through Letterboxd, there are tons of people that do 31 horror movies in 31 days, and there's different names for it, but it's kind of cool to be able to share that with others, especially others that like horror movies so much, because I know like Jake shared it with his brother, and it's a cool concept, and I'm glad to see it spread.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad that you said that because I forgot to put this in my notes, but I will also be doing a diary as well. And I'm thinking that I'm probably, if I have time, which is kind of, it's a little bit wishful thinking, I think, but I might do like a short, like couple sentences review, even if I've seen the movie. Just kind of like a for sure diary of everything that I watch for Shocktober. So I will definitely be keeping that on Letterboxd as well. So as far as 2018 Shocktober, do you have anything big planned, like a franchise review or any cool movies that you're really looking forward to watching?
So when I put my list together, so I have 34 movies on here right now that I put together about a week or two ago that I plan to watch. And some are new, some are old. There's not really anything I plan to do like from a franchise standpoint. I thought about doing Halloween since obviously the new Halloween movie comes out this October, and I thought it'd be cool to watch all of them leading up to it. But this new movie pretty much ignores all the sequels, so I don't think I'll do that. I'll probably just watch the original, probably the night before I see the new one. So, long story short, no franchise reviews, but obviously what I'm looking forward to the most is the new Halloween movie, for sure.
All right, cool. So I actually do have a few things that I am planning on doing that I'm really looking forward to. So, like I said, I kind of try to do at least one franchise review. Like I said, I did Scream 2 years ago, and then I did Child's Play last year. And I actually decided to do something a little bit different than just picking a franchise and then just watching the movies in order. I actually decided, since we talk about Blumhouse so much and they're kind of known, they do other things, but they're mostly known for putting out really great horror movies. They do have some like weird rom-coms just like sprinkled in there. If you look at their Blumhouse's filmography, there are some like weird rom-coms sprinkled in there, but obviously they're known for their horror movies. So I decided to do kind of a franchise review of Blumhouse. There's way too many to watch. I mean, they put out like 3 or 4 movies a year, so it would basically be me just watching Blumhouse movies the entire Shocktober, and I still wouldn't hit all of them. So I decided to just take like a handful of them. So I went through their filmography and I picked a few of them that I've seen before that I wanted to give another shot to, which is Paranormal Activity and Insidious. Both of those have big fan bases, and I didn't particularly like either one of them, but I've only seen them one each. So I definitely want to give them another shot because people love them so much. So those are 2 that I definitely want to watch. But then I also picked a few of them that I've never seen before, kind of slipped through the cracks for me. One of them is Dark Skies, which is a Kerry Russell horror movie that the only thing I remember from is that scene where the birds fly into the window. I think that's the only thing that I remember from that trailer, and the fact that, of course, Kerry Russell's in it. And then The Purge, which I don't know if that necessarily counts as a horror movie. It kind of is, because it kind of has like the stranger, like intruder vibe to it. But for me, like I know that, at least judging from the trailers, it seems like some of those kind of went more towards action than necessarily horror. But I'm definitely excited to see, because I'm not a huge Ethan Hawke fan, but he is in one of my favorite Blumhouse movies, which is Sinister. So we'll see how that goes. Lords of Salem, which is a Rob Zombie movie, and we've talked a lot about whether or not we think Rob Zombie is a very good director, especially when it comes to horror, and so I'm excited to see if I like that one. But I know that has a smaller fan base, but it definitely does have a fan base to it. And then Ouija, which I haven't heard good things about, but I want to give it a shot because I actually did hear that the second one is pretty good. So I'm excited to see if the first one is at least good enough where I can at least give the second one a shot. And then, of course, other than my franchise review, I have a few other things I want to do. Of course, as I do every year for the last like 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be attending Shocktober in Irvington, which I haven't honestly been a very good friend, and I have forgotten to pimp this out. It is Friday, October 12th. At 8 p.m. if you're in the Indianapolis area. It will be at the Playground Production Studios in Indy. It's $8 a piece, and it's just a really good time if you like the horror genre. Several like short filmmakers participate in this. They show the short film, then they have interviews with the director, the producers, whatever, and it's just a good time. Tyler and I have talked a lot about it because we actually participated in it a couple of years ago, and we promise eventually we will make that short public. There are a few things I want to make a couple of changes to it, just from the production standpoint, but for the most part, we will eventually make our short public. So yeah, that event is always a good time. My wife and I both go up to Indianapolis for it, and she looks forward to it, I think, as much as I do, because it's just a fun time. I will put a link to tickets in the show notes of this particular episode. And finally, two more things I want to talk about real quick. There is a special Fathom Events screening of Night of the Living Dead. They're doing a 4K restoration of that movie, and they're showing for 2 nights only. I think it's October 24th and the 25th. I think my ticket is for the 25th. and I'm definitely looking forward to that. So that will be my Shocktober staple for Night of the Living Dead. I'm going to go see it in the theater for the second year in a row because, like I said, last year I did the riff tracks. This will be the 4K restoration, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is not film related, but just kind of like horror related. I have already asked off for Halloween. So I asked off for the day of Halloween, which I think is a Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And in the morning, early afternoon, I plan on streaming on the YouTube channel Outlast, which is a really awesome horror game. Well, I've heard it's awesome. I've never played it myself. And I believe it's a fairly short game, like 4 or 5 hours. So I plan, if that's the case, I plan on streaming until I beat it on Halloween. So I know that's not film related, but it's kind of the spirit of Shocktober. So if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to us on YouTube, The Nerds You're Looking For.
Wow, that was a lot. I should have prepared more.
I was thinking when you finished talking, I was like, man, I'm just going to monopolize this entire conversation because I have a lot of things that I've planned.
So one thing I did think about doing, and I didn't end up adding a ton to my Shocktober preview list, but it's something that I'll probably end up doing over the course of the month anyways, is there are a lot of Stephen King movies I want to go back and either revisit or watch for the first time. And that was kind of sparked by Castle Rock, which we reviewed on our last episode. So one that comes to mind, and I don't even think it's like thought of as a very good movie, but for whatever reason, I really want to watch it, is Thinner. And then
I haven't seen that movie since I was a little kid. I thought you were going to go with Pet Sematary.
So I've watched Pet Sematary the last 2 years. I don't know that I'll watch that again, but like I've never seen Salem's Lot. I know that there's a Dead Zone movie. There's just other things out there that I've not seen, and I don't think those movies are thought of as being great, but I still want to watch them. Like I've never seen Cujo, I've never seen Christine. I'd love to revisit Carrie. So there's quite a few Stephen King movies that I think that I'll probably watch this year.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. That might be something that I look to do next year is kind of my franchise review. That's a good idea because there are just a few that you've named that I haven't seen as well. And I definitely enjoyed Salem's Lot as a book. I remember liking that quite a lot. So I may sneak that in at some point this month now that you've reminded me of it. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this Shocktober. It's going to be a good time as always. Like we plan on doing a movie a day. At least I plan on doing a movie a day, but this month is going to be so crazy. Like I can't even imagine that I'm going to have enough time with the YouTube channel, Making a Murderer, Daredevil, Red Dead 2. Like it's just, there's too much in October. I was really surprised, and this has nothing to do with Shocktober, but I was really surprised that literally Making a Murderer and Daredevil drop on the same day. And I guess they're not the same audience, so to speak, but I mean, it's Netflix. You're dropping two of your biggest properties on the same day.
Yeah, it's crazy. And for me, I think Making a Murderer season 2 can probably hold off. Like I'll probably wait till November for that one because obviously that's become so mainstream. If something crazy would have happened in that case, I would have already heard about it. So I already know that there was stuff that went on with Brendan, his last name Dorsey or
Dassey.
I already know there was stuff that went on with him, and I just don't think that season of that show is going to tell me anything I don't already know.
Sure.
So I'll probably wait till November for that, but I'd assume, I don't want to make any promises, but I'd assume we'll end up reviewing Daredevil. So we'll need to get through that, and then again, yeah, a horror movie every day. Like it's a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's gonna be fun. I'm already obviously jacked up for it. I wish Hellfest was a little bit better to kind of get me into that mood, but it's definitely going to be interesting. So I know that was kind of a short main topic, but to kind of keep the discussion going for Nerd Favorite, and you kind of already answered this question already, but I wanted to put that caveat in anyways. I want to know what the movie you're most looking forward to watching other than Halloween. I know that you said Halloween obviously is the thing that we're most excited for, and it would have been my answer as well. But for the sake of conversation, to kind of take that out of the running, I want to know what your the movie that you're most looking forward to. And for me, because I'm such a big fan of The Thing, that movie, the John Carpenter movie, I really have been kind of embarrassed that I've never actually seen the original. So there was a John Carpenter, but then of course there was that just garbage prequel movie that we're never going to talk about again because it was so bad. Like, they were given such good material and they completely wasted it. But for most people, I don't know if they know that that's actually the John Carpenter is actually a remake of a movie. I think it was in 1951 or 52, called The Thing from Another World, which is based on, I think, a short story, I think from the same, I think it's the same title. I probably should have looked that up. But yeah, so I'm definitely excited to see that movie. I don't expect it to be like super gory or super scary because it was in the early 50s, but I'm definitely excited, mostly excited to see how it's different from the John Carpenter Thing, because from what I understand, the John Carpenter Thing, the reason they remade it was because he wanted to make a movie closer to the actual short story. So I'm definitely excited to kind of see how it's different, because I've seen The Thing so many times that it's going to probably be easy for me to pick out those differences.
Yeah, that should be interesting, man. I'm almost interested in reading the short story too. So
for sure.
For me, there are two movies that I've wanted to watch for quite a while, and I've purposely put them off for Shocktober. So the first is The Ritual, which I believe is a Netflix movie, but either way, people started talking about it after it dropped on Netflix, and I purposefully didn't watch it because I wanted to save it for Shocktober, so I'm excited to watch that. But I think a movie that I'm more excited to watch, even besides that, is a movie that kind of came and went, and I didn't hear much about it, but I thought it looked really good, and that's called Unsane. It's a Steven Soderbergh movie, and it's about this lady that gets involuntarily committed to a mental institution, and I guess the whole mystery is whether or not she's insane or not. So I'm really excited to watch that as well. I'm pretty sure it has a pretty high score on Rotten Tomatoes, and definitely looks pretty tense. So I'm excited to watch it.
For sure. All right, man. So I think that's it for episode 209 of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. As always, I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. We're on it. That really helps us out, especially if you just want to rate us. You don't necessarily have to review us. Those ratings really help us get kind of separated from the saturated genre, which is the TV and film podcasts. So we definitely appreciate that. And like I said in the intro, you can check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com. Comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. And finally, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, nerds.
Later, guys.